Hi everybody, I'm Todd Banner. Welcome to my channel. Well, I just read this article on one of the big photo sites, and the title of the article was "Stock Photography is a Scam." And in all honesty, I can understand why some people, or a lot of people, might feel that way. It's a tough gig. It just is. And it has never been that easy. So my experience with stock photography goes back to the mid-1990s when I worked as a photo researcher at a stock photography agency in Chicago that specialized in medical, scientific, and healthcare images. And in those days, stock photography wasn't something that every photographer could do. It was really not something that a lot of hobbyists could do. It really was something that professional photographers did, because professional photographers generate a lot of images, and some of those images are useful as stock. And at the time, I don't know if it still is, they would have in their contracts that any outtakes that were usable could be used as stock photography. And you know, if a client didn't want that, it'd be fine. The photographer would charge them more. So what has changed is digital came along. Everybody can get a digital camera. And microstock came along. And microstock was relatively open to most people, even hobbyists. And some of the newer stock agencies like Alamy. Alamy, which is what I use, was open to anybody who can take a well-exposed, technically good photo. Sharp, well exposed, doesn't even need to be that great of a photo. They'll take it. They have a ranking system so that the garbage gets pushed down in the search results. But you know, if you take a crappy photo that's well exposed and technically okay, they'll take it. A lot of agencies edit for content, where if you are submitting an image or images that they already have a ton of, they're just not going to take them. But I think where the problem comes from is people have this idea that, you know, I'm shooting this stuff, especially enthusiasts and hobbyists, and they're like, oh, well, I shoot all these images and I should be able to sell these as stock. And without doing a lot of thinking about, well, why does an image sell as stock? And an image sells as stock because it illustrates something that the customer needs to illustrate, or it shows a concept that the customer, the end user, it's a concept that they want to show, they want to illustrate. So you're running around taking your pretty pictures. I mean, your street photography, your nature photography, your landscape photography. Everybody does that. Lots of photographers do nature photography. Lots of photographers do landscape photography. Lots of photographers do street photography. Some are really, really good. Some are okay. Some are not that great. But everybody thinks they're great. The approach, instead of I'm going to take all these pictures and I'm going to upload all these pictures and get paid for it, that's kind of not the way to do it. And the problem with microstock, of course, is you're going to make pennies. You're going to make pennies per image. You know, I tried wire stock. Just the income wasn't there. And if every photographer went, well, I'm just not going to provide these big agencies who are selling my images for a pittance, maybe the problem would kind of alleviate. One of the reasons I use Alamy is they're not microstock. Even for royalty-free, they're not microstock. They don't have a subscription model. You license images per image. You get a discount if you're an end user and you're going to license a bunch of images, you will get a discount. That's usually what happens when I see an image that's sold for not a whole lot. It is probably a bulk deal. But the images that I shoot, I know that any subject that I've covered, I know that when somebody does a search, there's a really good possibility that my images are going to be in the front page. because Alamy has a ranking system. And if your images get a lot of views and they sell, you move up in that ranking system and your stuff is going to show up in searches. And then I'm gotten more and more careful about what I upload. And I try to upload images where I know that there's either a concept or it illustrates something that an end user is going to need. I still do a lot of like science and medicine type subjects. Those are always hot sellers. You know, I have this one genre of blurred emergency vehicles. I mean, if I see an emergency vehicle that's racing somewhere, I try to get some shots using a slower shutter speed so they're blurred. And that group of images is a consistent seller. As far as concepts, you can be walking around and see something that illustrates a concept. I had an image just sell this year, and my images, as far as sales this year, I'm at right around $500 gross. So that's not great. I've had much better years at this point, but we'll see how it goes. But several years ago, I was in Chicago, and I was right out on the street outside the old Montgomery Awards building. This is one of these old, Chicago is known for its architecture, and so there's one of these old kind of Art Deco-ish buildings. And on the tower of the old Wards building is a statue, and it's called the Spirit of Progress. And it's, I'll put this image up so you can see it. And when I had my GX85, and I had the 14-140 millimeter super zoom lens, which is probably one of the best super zooms that I've ever used. And I saw an aircraft coming at high altitude with a contrail, not a chemtrail. Don't get me started on how silly that is. So I see this airplane with a contrail, and I realize that it is going to pass right next to the Spirit of Progress statue. And I thought right away, the Spirit of Progress and a jet aircraft. This is a statue that was done, I think, in the 1930s, whenever they built that building, almost 100 years ago. And here we have this jet aircraft flying over it, nice contrail. That image sold because it illustrates a concept. So, sorry to burst anybody's bubble, but if you want to get into stock photography, you're going to have to research it. You're not going to be able to just do this whole willy-nilly thing of I'm just going to upload my pretty pictures to stock and make money. No, you're not. It's not going to happen. If you're a travel photographer, still a market for travel photography. I mean, I think that market's going to, we'll see. I have a feeling that market may decline, but we'll see how it goes. AI, it's going to have an effect, although, as I mentioned in a previous video, the problem with AI for an end user is there's no copyright protection. So they can't keep somebody from copying that AI image and using it, if they're a competitor, and using the same image. Because the courts have held, except for in China, I believe the Chinese courts have said that AI can be copyrighted. In the United States, you can't, and I think in every other country except China, you can't do that. So, yeah, there's a whole lot of things that are happening right now. The other reason to be strategic with this is keywording is drudge work. And that is an area where I think AI is going to make a difference, because if you now have things where AI can look at an image, start popping in keywords for you, that takes a lot of that drudgery out of it. But up until this point, one of the reasons to be strategic and not upload willy-nilly is to save yourself a lot of work. There's really no point in keywording a bunch of images if they're just not going to sell. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on this matter. I understand why this author thinks it's a scam, but I think that the main problem is, and he actually mentions this, is how much imagery is available. And the only way that you're going to be successful at it is if you provide images that are different, that cover a different subject, that is something that not everybody is shooting, are images of things that, even mundane items, you know, people don't shoot the mundane. So those images are actually hard to come by. So consider that. I think that's enough on this today. If this was helpful to you, useful, interesting, please hit that like button. It's a big help to me. Ring the little bell if you want to know when my upcoming videos are up. I'm Todd Banner. I will see you in the next video.